Welcome to The Fight on Matrix Midwest with Randy Carricker and company.
Hi kids, and welcome to The Fight. Great to have you with us. I've got some get off my lawn material later on in the program. Former Cardinal Matt Adams joins us, and our list in honor of the Colorado Avalanche, owned by Stan Kroenke. The best teams over the last 40 years that got knocked out of the playoffs, because they're going to. But first, it's time for your quick hits, and they are sponsored by St. Luke's. And let's get things started with this. With the Cardinals, after a 5-1 start against the National League Central to start this season, 4-0 against Pittsburgh, 1-1 against Milwaukee, the Cardinals started their current NL Central 4A by going 3-5. Well, the Cardinals are in second place in the division as we speak. We're starting to see where the cracks in the armor are, with a third of the season complete. After scoring exactly 5 runs a game per game in April, the Cardinals have averaged 3.9 runs per game in May. That starts at the top. J.J. Wetherholt had an .856 OPS in April, .608 in May. The on-base plus slugging, both down, so the lower OPS. And while the Cardinals starters are 14th in ERA and 15th in innings pitched, the bullpen is 22nd with an earned run average of 4.41. There are bound to be ups and downs with a young team. Heck, look at the Cubs. They're a veteran team, and they've had 2 10-game winning streaks and then went 2-14 after the second one. The key for the Cardinals, like Wetherholt, is going to be adjusting to how other teams adjust to them. And that's what guys like Wetherholt and Kyle Leahy are dealing with right now as they go through their first full seasons in their jobs. Wetherholt at second base in the major leagues, Leahy as a major league starting pitcher. This stretch was never going to be a referendum about the Cardinals versus the NL Central, but we'll probably see is what we've seen so far. They'll probably go about 500 against the Central, which will mean that they're just the same as the Reds and the Pirates and the Cubs, and probably not as good as the Milwaukee Brewers. The head coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers is Kenny Atkinson, and he's a good coach. Did a good job with Brooklyn when he was there, was an assistant for a few years under Steve Kerr in Golden State, so he knows what he's doing. Well, on Sunday, with his team down 3-0 to the Knicks, Atkinson said this.
Analytically, I think we've won I said 3 out of 3, we're 2 out of 3 in the expected. I don't know if you guys follow that. There's an expected score, and we won 2 out of 3. And I know you're looking confused, but I'm not. There is really, if you believe in process and all that, like, man, take that layer. I know I don't throw that on them. I see it for myself. I'm like, man, I have this feeling, then I can go to our analytical table and be like, man, we are, and I think last night it was, the expected score was like 1 point or 2.
Okay, so you're down 3-0, about to get swept, which they did, losing game 4 by 37 points. It's not expected points, Kenny. It's real points, not the points that are scored in games. The points scored in games are the most important ones. The Knicks had outscored the Cavs by 40 at that point. This is a problem with analytics. People think they've won because the numbers say that they were expected to win. Their numbers say that. Sports doesn't work that way, Kenny. It's how many do you actually score? Not how many you're expected to score, how many you actually score. And if you had more than the other guy, once standings and championships are decided on, we can start talking about expected scoring. But until then, we're going to go with real scores. And until then, you've got gobbledygook, and you look like you're trying to save your job, which is something you may have to do after getting drubbed again by the Knicks in Game 4. As New York swept their way to the finals, winning with real points rather than expected ones. Heading into the season, the Chicago Cubs' top 4 starters were Cade Horton, Edward Cabrera, Matthew Boyd, and Shoto Imanaga. With Cabrera being placed on the IL last week, 4 of their top 5 starters are now on the IL. We don't know why injuries occur, but the facts are that it'll be hard for the Cubs to go on any sort of a run without their starting pitching. Cabrera, Boyd, and Horton have made 17 of the 33 available starts to them. Horton is out for the season after elbow surgery. Boyd will miss at least 6 weeks after knee surgery, and ace Justin Steele may be out for the year because of a setback after Tommy John surgery. So as you watch the Cardinals, who haven't put a starting pitcher on the IL in the last year or this year, appreciate what's happening, because apparently the Redbirds have figured something out that nobody else in baseball has. They haven't been able to replicate the Cardinals' ability to keep pitchers healthy. Ali Marmol told me last year that the Cardinals have put together data to try to keep their pitchers healthy. This was early in the season, and they used that. They rested pitchers in spring training. They rested them in April and in most of May, and then the pitchers were able to kind of take off in June. They aren't trying to overdo it with their pitchers early. Now, I would love to see the Cardinals get 7 innings out of their starters, but this appears to be working. I would have to believe that not only will other teams ask the Cardinals how they go about keeping pitchers healthy, but they're also going to come after some of the Cardinals guys. A guy like Larry Day, the Cardinals farm director, a guy like Robin Sherfolio, he's going to wind up being a general manager someday, and a guy like Dusty Blake, he can get big money somewhere else when his contract is up, simply because he's able to save the team a lot of money, because the people that are getting paid to pitch are actually pitching. With the Astros getting a combined no-hitter on Memorial Day, exactly half of the last 16 Major League no-hitters have been combined no-nos. We've talked about how baseball's new generation that doesn't allow pitchers to traverse a third time through the lineup has eliminated the great pitching pairing as recently as 15 years ago. You know, you'd pay to watch Chris Carpenter against Roy Halladay, or Adam Wainwright against Clayton Kershaw, or John Lester against Max Scherzer. You don't do that anymore. We don't have the great pitching pairing in 2026, and we may never have it again. Aside from watching Shohei Ohtani pitch right now, what other starting pitcher strikes your fancy? And more to the point, what pair of starting pitchers strikes your fancy? But it used to be that you could go into a game and say, man, that guy can pitch a no-hitter any night that he's on the mound. He would go 9 innings, and he could allow no hits. That's what Halladay did. Heck, in a playoff game, he threw a couple of no-hitters. John Lester threw a no-hitter. Max Scherzer threw a 9-inning no-hitter. But right now, is there a pitcher out there you think going to a game, yeah, he could throw a 9-inning no-hitter tonight? I'm not sure there's a pitcher in baseball that I could think of where I would go to a game and I would say he could throw 9 innings tonight. That just doesn't exist. And so with that being the case, who's our Randy Johnson right now? Who's our Nolan Ryan? Who is our Max Scherzer in 2026? That guy doesn't exist. The impact deep into the game or the complete game or no-hit pitcher has been eliminated from MLB, and that's a shame. Hopefully at some point they'll get it back, but I don't think agents and I don't think the health people will allow the complete game or the complete no-hitter to come back into baseball. You know, the Blues drafted their best forward, Robert Thomas, with the 20th pick in the first round. Jimmy Snuggerud, who has a chance to be a superstar, came to the Blues with the 23rd pick in the first round. Dalibor Dvorsky with the 10th pick. And Stanley Cup champ Colton Parayko was a third-round pick. While the players from this year's draft might take some time to develop, the Blues deserve the benefit of the doubt when they use the 11th and 16th and perhaps 29th pick on those players in round 1. 3 years ago, not only did they get Dvorsky at number 10, but they took Otto Stenberg at 25. He has a chance to be a really good player. And they took Theo Lindstein at 29. He has a chance to be a really good player. The Blues may not get a superstar in this year's first round. Usually, unless you're picking in the top 5, you don't get a superstar. But in 3 years, it shouldn't surprise any of us if they get 3 serviceable players out of next month's draft. Now, one of the things that you have to deal with in the National Hockey League that you don't deal with so much in football is teams don't trade out of the top 5. They don't try to accumulate picks. What they do is try to get that superstar, because history has shown us that the McDavids and the Dreisaitls and the McKinnons of the world, they come with top 5 picks. So teams that have those picks, even teams with a wealth of young players like the San Jose Sharks, they aren't going to move the number 2 pick so that they can get 3 first-rounders and have a wealth of activity. Football does that. It just doesn't work that way in hockey. So we have to be great evaluators, like the Blues have been, and then hope to get lucky, like Tampa Bay did with Kucherov when he arrived on their scene with a second-round pick, or Boston with David Pastrnak, who was the 25th pick in the draft. It's really hard to find that superstar player anywhere outside of the top 5 picks in the first round. Those, my friends, are your quick hits, and they are brought to you by St. Luke's. Top-notch doctors in everything from heart health to orthopedics and more. Visit stlukes-stl.com today. Later in the show, we're going to bring you our daily wager. Stick around for that. But coming up, our friend, former Cardinal Matt Adams, joins us to talk some baseball here in The Fight. All right, it's always good to talk to our friend, the former Cardinal and Redbird fan favorite, Matt Adams, who joins us in the fight. And there he is. You were just telling me that you did some cooking for Memorial Day. Are you a good cook, Matt? Do you do it?
No, I'm definitely not the cook in the household. My wife, she handles that. She's a professional in that realm. But yeah, we had a good Memorial Day cookout by the pool and just enjoyed the nice weather.
Good to hear it. Well, we were cooking out and being outside. We were also paying attention to the Cardinals. And Jacob Mizrachi of Milwaukee, 12 strikeouts, 57 pitches, over 100 miles an hour. What did you think of him?
Yeah, he's a stud. He's just a powerful pitcher. He's got a powerful arm. His body is well connected, and he knows how to keep the hitters off balance. He does a really good job of mixing his stuff, using that high velocity heater at the top of the zone, and then the soft stuff. Well, his stuff isn't really soft, but his off-speed stuff underneath the zone. Yeah, so he's one of the better pitchers in the league for sure.
Yeah, he's remarkable. But that being said, nobody's ever done what he's done, throwing that many pitches over 100 miles an hour, topping out at 103 plus on a regular basis. You've been around the game, you've been around pitchers. Do you think that for a career that sort of velocity is sustainable? I can't tell if he's giving max effort or not, but man, it's hard to imagine that he could throw 100 for that long, because I think Nolan Ryan, and the only two guys I can think of are Nolan Ryan and Aroldis Chapman that have done that.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's showing early on in his, young career that it is sustainable. The velocity is up there for sure. I think as long as he takes care of his body, continues to just keep getting stronger. Like I said earlier, his body is connected. Mm-hmm. He's not, while he may look like he's throwing max effort, I think it's effortless. The arm, everything is synced up to where it's coming out super powerful, even the off-speed stuff. So yeah, I think as long as he stays healthy and takes care of his body, I think this is sustainable for him.
Okay, so you've stood in there against guys with 100-mile-an-hour fastballs, and he's from 60 feet 6 inches away. How do you do that? How do you prepare for that, and how do you catch up to it?
Yeah, a lot of it is just your work in the cage, having your BP pitcher move up as close as you possibly can and just, throw firm BP. That way you're training your eyes, you're training your mind at that short distance to, say yes or no to whether it's a pitch you want to go after. So for me, that's what I did in the batting cages. Whenever I knew that I was facing a guy with massive velocity, I would have my BP pitcher come as close as possible, probably 10 to 15 feet closer than what they normally would be. And it was just, it felt like you had, as soon as the arm got up there to the release point, you were basically saying, yeah, let's go. It's hard, but that's what you got to do when the velocity in the major leagues is, everybody's throwing 98 plus nowadays. Doesn't matter if you're a reliever, doesn't matter if you're a starter. The velocity is for real at the major league level.
Hey, Matt, if fans aren't aware of it, we have AI now where AI can absolutely replicate a major league pitcher. So you can go into a cage and you can see it's basically what Mizrachi is, right? And the AI delivers the ball and the pitching machine delivers the ball at the exact same speed. How does that work? Is that effective to get used to it too?
Yeah, absolutely. They, what they have now is they have the screens that it's projected up there. The actual, Mizrachi would be on the screen going through his lineup, and then there would be a little hole at where the pitching machine would release the ball, and it's actually you take live at bats off him in the batting cage. So yes, I believe the technology that we have now in the game, it's tremendous for these hitters trying to prepare to face guys like Mizrachi on a nightly basis.
Incredible. All right, we've talked about the adjustments that the Cardinal hitters are going to have to make, and specifically the rookie J.J. Wetherholt. And J.J. in April had an 856 OPS, and then seemingly the pitchers have adjusted to him because he's had a 608 OPS in May. What do you see as the difference?
Well, I think first off, the way that he's commanding the strike zone is still at an elite level. Mm-hmm. I think, he's swinging at good strikes. He's taking his walks whenever they're giving it to him. I think what's getting him into trouble, not even getting him into trouble, but through that first month, he's an aggressive hitter. He likes to go early on, first couple pitches of the at bat, and the pitchers were making mistakes, leaving balls out over the middle part of the plate, and he wasn't missing them. Where now, a month, through the month of April, now the book's out on him. Now, the opposing pitchers know that this kid is super aggressive. He's going to attack early on in the count. I think they're throwing a lot more soft speed or off-speed stuff, early on in the count to where he's expecting it to be a fastball, and that's the adjustment that he's making. So I think his, the drop-off in the OPS, it's the biggest thing is just, the pitchers are understanding what type of hitter he really is and how aggressive he is early on in the count.
Matt, one thing that I picked up being around baseball for a long time is that hitters think pitchers are dumb and pitchers think hitters are dumb, right? It's just the way it is. But do pitchers have trends? Like when you get in there and he's 2-1, can you, in a certain situation, 2-1, 2 out, runner at second, and you've got all this information in your head, can pitchers become predictable that way if you're a hitter?
Yes, and vice versa. Hitters can become predictable as well from the pitcher's standpoint as well. But yes, I think pitchers do fall into tendencies, and well, like you said, Randy, whether it's a 2-1 count, it's 85% heater, that hitter's going up there standing in that box looking for a fastball, and the majority of the time he's going to get it. So yes, to your point, pitchers are dumb. They can be predictable, especially if they've been in the game for a while. There's a lot of video out there. There's, the book on them as well. Just, the book's getting out on Wetherholt. There's books out there on all these pitchers. There's all this data. There's all the videos. So the hitters have just as much information as the pitchers do whenever they're doing their homework.
And then on the other hand of Wetherholt, Jordan Walker has a higher OPS in May than he had in April. What are you seeing from Jordan that allows him to not only continue to thrive, but actually improve?
Yeah, I think, like we've talked about with him the last couple of weeks, his confidence is just through the roof. He's trusting himself. He's trusting his routine. He's trusting, how he's preparing night in and night out for these pitchers. And he's buying into it. He's not letting the external noise get to him. He's trusting his routine. He's trusting what he does well, and he's not steering from that. I think that's the biggest thing that you're seeing from Jordan Walker this season, is that he is just really confident in who he is becoming as a major league player.
I look at numbers and I try to make my points with numbers about baseball. And I thought it was interesting. A few years ago, John Mozeliak at the winter warm-up was talking about batting average. And he said, we don't evaluate hitters on batting average, which I still look at. But for you as a hitter, Matt, what are the stats that you find to be important?
Yeah, I'm a little bit old school. I like batting average. I like batting average of balls in play. And I think OPS is a big one because that's your on-base percentage and slugging together. So if you have a high OPS, that means you're getting on base and you're doing damage whenever you're making contact with the baseball. So for me, batting average, balls in play, and OPS, those are for me. And I know there's some hitting guys out there that would disagree, but for me, the OPS and the batting average, balls in play are two of the numbers that I look at of how well hitters are doing.
Well, I don't care what they think. I care what you think. Hey, how cool was it the other day to see a guy like Brian Torres, after 11 years in the minors, make his major league debut and then hit a homer in his first game?
Yeah, I'm sitting here. I actually played against Brian in independent ball in 2022. He was with the Milwaukee Milkmen, and I was up in Kansas City playing on the Monarchs. So I got to know Brian a little bit, and just playing against him, sharing the field. But his story is so special. Sitting here getting goosebumps thinking about it. A guy that just grinds for 11 straight years in indie ball, minor leagues, and then you get that call and you go into Cincinnati, which is a great place to hit, by the way. So a great place to make your major league debut. And he gets up there and gets a hit, and then he caps off the debut with a homer. And to see his family in the stands going crazy, and then you got to see the video of him afterwards down in the tunnel embracing his family after his debut. It's just a special moment for a guy like Brian.
And I mentioned this on the Monday show. It doesn't happen in football. You don't have a guy kick around for 11 years and then show up on the NFL scene. It doesn't happen in basketball. It doesn't happen in hockey. Only in baseball can a guy kick around for a decade and then show up and make his debut and have that level of success. It really is one of the unique, cool things about baseball.
Yeah, it's that's what makes our game so special is stories like this, and just a true testament to the work ethic and the kind of guy that Brian is to grind for those 11 years and not give up, and because I'm sure some of those years were pretty tough years, and when am I going to get my shot? But he kept his head down, kept putting the work in, and it's paying off, and now he can call himself a big leaguer.
Hey, Matt, I mentioned earlier in the show that every team is going to have its ups and downs. The Cubs, as talented as they are, have their injuries. 2 10-game winning streaks. Now they've lost 12 of 14. But especially a team as young as the Cardinals. How much concern is there about dealing with the youth? Because, and I'll start by saying, with young players, and I'm sure you're this way, you're kind of predisposed to not worrying about what happened before, right? You guys are always looking ahead.
Yeah, for me, I'm not super concerned about the Cardinal team. I think they're being guided by great baseball guys. Ollie, Yanni's on staff now, John J. Descalso. Those guys have been there. They've done it. So whenever you have a young team, when you got guys like those guys leading the herd and making sure guys are prepared to go out there and play the game the right way, they're going to be right where they need to be. So I think they've shown over the course of these couple months so far into this season that they're able to let go of the previous night's game and move on. Even if they lose 3 or 4 games in a row, they're able to flush that and be able to turn around and get right back on the wagon and get back in the win column.
And I mentioned the Cubs, and I saw the stat that they haven't won since Pete Crow Armstrong got into it and cursed a White Sox fan a couple of weeks ago. What was the closest that Matt Adams came to snapping at a fan?
Yeah, there's a video of me, and it actually took place in Cincinnati. There was a foul ball where a fan reached over and caught the foul ball. My glove was right underneath him, fell on the tarp. So I kind of used the fan. Kind of gave him a little shove to get back up off the tarp and get back out on the field. So yeah, I would probably say that's definitely the closest. I like to, I'm a good-hearted person. I like to, say that I can keep my emotions in check. But that was a big play, big out that we needed, and that guy just reached over and got the ball before I could get it. So I had to give him a nice little lovely shove on my way back to first base.
Good for you. There you go. Good. All right, Matt, I promised you last week when I asked you which pitchers you didn't want to see that we'd let you talk about the pitchers that you absolutely owned. So last week we talked about who you didn't want to see. Who could you not wait to face when you were in the majors?
Yeah, there's 4 names that come to mind: Tyson Ross, Tanner Roark, Jeff Samardzija, and Johnny Cueto. Tyson Ross and Tanner Roark, definitely by far the 2 guys that I had the most damage off of. Handful of homers off each of them, pretty high OPS.
Boom.
There's a nice one right there on camera off Tyson, little slider down and in, put it into the bullpen. So I think it, over the course of the year, our careers, I think me stepping into the plate against those 2 guys, I think it became more mental than anything. They saw me step into the plate. They knew that I had really good numbers off of them, and they were like, oh boy, I got to face Matt Adams again. And they would just, lead pitches over the middle part of the plate. So, definitely some good ones rolling on camera right now. But I would say, if Tanner Roark or Tyson Ross were on the mound, give me a uniform and let me stand at that batter's box.
Today, right? Today.
Yes,
and
today.
As we mentioned with Samardzija, 9 for 20 with 3 homers and a 1,500 OPS. You got all those guys. It must have been, especially being a Cardinal and the history that Cueto had with the Cardinals, when you were here and were pounding him, your teammates must have absolutely loved that.
Yeah, it was, he tried the old shimmy, pause stuff that, his gimmick that he did out on the mound. I don't think I have too many home runs, maybe 1 or 2 off them, but more doubles than anything. So I was doing damage, getting in scoring position, letting my teammates drive me in. So yeah, with the rivalry between us and the Reds, being able to have a guy like that where I knew that, my confidence was through the roof stepping into the box when he was on the mound, it helped us out big time.
All right, Matt, we have an amazing director here in Tyler Klaus. You have to watch now. See what he's got for you. Okay, here we go. A little pop-up to the right side. Matt Adams playing first base.
Yeah,
here we go.
There it is.
Oh, that jerk. Good job. Good job.
I was all over that, and him and his girlfriend kind of gave me some good gestures. There it is.
He flipped you off.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Got the old double finger on my way back to the first base. I had to answer to the media after that. So nice job throwing that up on there and having us take a look at that for sure.
Love it. Matt, you're the best. Thanks so much for the time. Always great to talk ball with you, and we'll do it again soon. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Randy.
All right, brother. That is Matt Adams joining us here in the fight. He is great and a lot of great insight. Coming up, as the Avalanche get ready to get eliminated, we're going to look at the best teams to get knocked out of the playoffs. That's next in the fight. Hey guys, as we get older, our plumbing gets older too, and we need to make sure that our bodies are well maintained. St. Luke's Urology offers expert, patient-centered care, treating everything from kidney stones and bladder issues to prostate health, urinary incontinence, and cancer screening and treatment. The team also specializes in vasectomies and vasectomy reversals, male infertility, testosterone therapy, and sexual health, conditions that can be tough to talk about, but that St. Luke's handles with discretion and respect. The team includes board-certified urologists and experienced advanced practice providers using minimally invasive approaches, including robotic surgery, for faster recovery times. Whether you're in West County or St. Charles County or South County, St. Luke's Urology has a location near you, and all providers are currently accepting new patients. To schedule an appointment, call 314-205-6060 or visit stlukes-stl.com. It's time for the list, and the Colorado Avalanche, as we know, are owned by our arch enemy, Stan Kroenke, and they have Nazem Kadri on their roster. They have a few Hall of Famers too, and Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar, along with Brent Burns. They were the best team in the National Hockey League throughout the course of the regular season. They won the President's Trophy, yet it looks like they're going to get bounced from the playoffs, maybe even swept out by Vegas. With that, we have the most dominant regular season teams to lose in the playoffs in the last 40 years. And we're going to start with our number 6, and that's Jim Montgomery's 22-23 Bruins. They were amazing. The Bruins won a record 65 games and put up an NHL record 135 points. David Pastrnak scored 61 goals. Defenseman Hampus Lindholm was a league-leading plus 49. And the goalies, the goalies were superb. Linus Ullmark had a league-high 40 wins that year, and a league best with a .938 save percentage and a 1.89 goals against. Not far behind was Jeremy Swayman. He had a .920 save percentage and a 2.27 GAA. The team had everything, including 3 probable future Hall of Famers in Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, and Patrice Bergeron. But once the playoffs started, the Panthers took it to Boston. Matthew Tkachuk became a playoff star. The Panthers are physical, tough, and gritty, just like Boston was, and they knocked out the Bruins in the first round in 7 games when Carter Verhaeghe scored this overtime winner. The best regular season team in NHL history was out after the first round of the playoffs. Ouch. All right, we'll move to number 5. The 1998 Minnesota Vikings were favored to go to the Super Bowl when they went 15-1 in the regular season, and then they routed the Arizona Cardinals in their first playoff game. The Vikes had the MVP and quarterback Randall Cunningham. Receiver Randy Moss led the league with 17 touchdown catches and was a first-team All-Pro. They scored a then-record 556 points and were 6th in the league in points allowed. Their offense was great. Their defense was great. And 4 of their 11 defensive players were All-Pro and or Pro Bowlers. And their kicker, Gary Anderson, was a first-team All-Pro. Well, you can't count on first-team All-Pros all the time.
Missed in 2 years. So that's a pretty good bet. If you say, do you think Gary Anderson will make this field goal? The answer should probably be yes.
39 yards away, and it's not good. The Falcons have one timeout. They have the ball as Anderson misses. Pulled it left.
Unbelievable. The Vikings had a chance to win the NFC. They could have gone to the Super Bowl had they beaten Atlanta. Anderson had a chance to give them a 10-point lead. He was 35 for 35 in field goals that year and 59 for 59 in extra points. He was absolutely perfect, and that's why John Madden said if you were going to make a bet, you'd bet on Anderson to make that field goal, but he couldn't hit it. And when it counted most, he missed with just over 2 minutes left. That would have put Minnesota up by 10. The Falcons won the game in overtime and then lost to Denver in the Super Bowl. That Vikings team was probably the best they've ever had, and they probably would have beaten Denver in that Super Bowl. All right, number 4. After winning the World Series in the COVID-shortened 2020 season, the Dodgers lost to a great team of destiny in the 2021 Braves in the NLCS. But what happened to the 2022 Dodgers, who had 111 wins? They dominated the regular season, finishing first in the National League West and securing the top seed in Major League Baseball. The Dodgers became just the 5th team in MLB history to reach 111 wins. Backed by the free agent signing of Freddie Freeman and the league's top run differential at plus 334, they were heavily favored to reach the World Series and win it. However, they suffered an abrupt postseason collapse, losing the NLDS 3-1 to the 89-win division rival Padres. In addition to Freeman, this edition of the Dodgers had Trey Turner and Will Smith and Mookie Betts and Justin Turner, but they couldn't come up with the win in the series against the Padres, and San Diego advanced, and the Dodgers did not. And that was one of the best teams in history, the best team the Dodgers have had during this run, but they didn't win the World Series. All right, let's move on to number 3, the 2015-2016 San Antonio Spurs. They put together one of the most dominant yet widely overlooked seasons in NBA history. Under legendary head coach Greg Popovich, they set a franchise record with a 67-15 regular season record. The Spurs tied an NBA record by going 40-1 at home at the AT&T Center, with their lone loss coming against the Warriors late in the season. The team led the NBA by allowing just 92.9 points a game and possessed the league's top defensive rating. Here's the problem. Even though they went 67-15, they finished an astonishing 6 games out of the Western Conference lead. The Golden State Warriors went 73-9, and the Spurs actually lost to Oklahoma City in the conference semifinals. That was a Thunder team that featured Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka, and Steven Adams. But that Spurs team had Tim Duncan in his last year. They were led in scoring by Kawhi Leonard. Just too much of the rest in the Western Conference for one of the best teams ever, the 15-16 San Antonio Spurs, one of the best teams ever to have a great year, but then get knocked out before the championship. All right, number 2, we remember the 95-96 Red Wings for the Steve Yzerman goal that knocked Wayne Gretzky's Blues out of the playoffs. Well, that Red Wings team went 62-13-7 in the regular season. They finished with the 3rd most goals and allowed the fewest goals in the league. But the Wings had to play another powerhouse after the Blues in the Western Conference Finals in their first year in Denver. The Colorado Avalanche saw all of the losing and youth that they dealt with in Quebec come to fruition in Colorado. The Avalanche eliminated the vaunted Red Wings in 6 games in one of the bloodiest series of all time. In Game 6, Avalanche right wing Claude Lemieux checked Red Wing center Chris Draper from behind, driving Draper's face into the boards. Lemieux's hit on Draper knocked him out of the game and into the hospital with a broken jaw, a shattered cheekbone, and an orbital bone that was broken and required reconstructive surgery involving his jaw being wired shut. He also had numerous stitches. Well, the Avalanche went on to upset the Red Wings in 6 games. Peter Forsberg here, putting it away in Game 6. He was an electrifying player, and eventually the Avalanche not only would knock the Red Wings out, but they would win their first Stanley Cup. After the traditional handshakes that take place after a playoff series, former Red Wing winger Dino Ciccarelli said of Lemieux, "I can't believe I shook this guy's friggin' hand after the game. That pisses me right off." Well, you did it, Dino. I mean, the Red Wings weren't any angels either, but that was a great Red Wings team. They should have been beaten by the Blues. If Grant Fuhr is healthy, the Blues probably win the Stanley Cup that year, but the Red Wings, one of the great all-time teams in NHL history, getting knocked out by Colorado. And our number 1. After going 15-1 and winning the Super Bowl in 1985, the Chicago Bears were amazing again in 1986. They went 14-2 and actually allowed fewer points in 86, 187, than was regarded as the best defense ever in 85 that allowed 195 points. Problem with this Bears team was injuries at quarterback. Jim McMahon played just 6 games. Steve Fuller was ineffective in quarterbacking 2 losses. The Bears went 7-0 with Mike Tomczak at quarterback, but he threw only 2 touchdown passes to 10 interceptions. So the Bears signed Doug Flutie out of the CFL, and the little fella just couldn't get it done in the playoffs. This interception that Flutie threw to Darrell Green set up the eventual game-winning touchdown for a very good Washington team that also got knocked out of the playoffs by the eventual Super Bowl champion New York Giants. But Flutie's interception set up Jay Schrader to throw the eventual winning touchdown pass to Art Monk. Schrader, leading the Redskins at that time, he would be supplanted by Doug Williams eventually, but this was the touchdown that put Washington ahead for good, and they would knock out the 14-2 Bears, and a team that should have been dominant for a long time wound up losing this game and never going back to another Super Bowl. That was a shame, because with all of the personality they had, with all of the players they had, one of the most talented teams in history, it was wasted in 1986, and that edition of the Bears never was a champion again. That is today's list here in The Fight, and coming up, we've got the Daily Wager for you here on Matrix Midwest. All right, time for the Daily Wager, and the Carolina Hurricanes have reestablished themselves as the best team in the NHL's Eastern Conference. After losing Game 1 to Montreal, now they've won a couple in a row, and it looks like the Hurricanes are on their way. Yet, that being said, they are a 1.5 goal favorite on Wednesday night in Montreal, but they're plus 190 to win that game. So I'm going to take the Hurricanes. They've been dominant lately, and even though they win games in overtime, I think they're going to start really rolling over the Canadiens. So I'm going to take those Carolina Hurricanes minus 1.5 at plus 230. And so we'll set this up, and we don't need to do that part of it. Here, let me just get us a bet here, and we'll tell you how much we're going to bet. We'll put $100 on this. And here we go. There's 100. Oh, we got 1,100. Hold on, Randy can fix this. See, you might think I don't know what I'm doing, guys, but I do. So we've got $100 on this, and our payout is $290. That is our daily wager. Carolina Hurricanes over the Montreal Canadiens. We'll be dancing if they win. That's your daily wager here in The Fight. And coming up, we've got today's Fun Fact Story Time with Uncle Randy, and today in sports history here on The Fight. All right, time for today's fun fact, and this one's amazing from Florida. With the dream of the College World Series berth slipping away, Florida softball coach Tim Walton was ejected in the 5th inning of the Gators' 16-7 loss to Texas Tech in the final game of the Gainesville Super Regional on Sunday. Now, that's not the story. The story is this. According to former Florida basketball player Jason Williams, whose daughter transferred from Florida to Texas Tech, the ejection of Walton might have been intentional. Jason Williams says that Walton's ejection was premeditated so that he wouldn't have to shake hands after the game with Williams' daughter Mia. Williams said, quote, he got kicked out because he didn't want to shake her hand. He said that the younger Williams played at Florida for 2 years and played all 65 games last season for a Gators team that advanced to the Women's College World Series. After the 2025 season, she transferred to Texas Tech, which was coming off a run to the championship series of the World Series and has become a haven for high-profile transfers in recent years because of the amount of money they're willing to spend in NIL at Texas Tech. Well, over the course of the series, Mia Williams was hit by 5 pitches, including the first pitch of the first game and the first pitch of the decisive third game. In her second at-bat in Game 3, Williams launched a 2-run home run that gave Texas Tech a 5-4 lead and prompted a celebration that earned the Red Raiders a warning from the umpire. So Walton is mad, he gets kicked out of the game, and he doesn't have to shake hands with the girl that he was jilted by, that played for him at Florida and transferred to Texas Tech and then beat him in the regional to keep him from the World Series. What a great story. I don't know if Jason Williams is right or not, but it is a great story, and it would be great if a guy got ejected from the game simply because a player that transferred from his school was going to beat him and he didn't want to shake hands with her. That is today's fun fact. All right, it's time for story time with Uncle Randy, and we've got some 90s hockey that Tyler wants to hear about. And you know what? We can go back to 1990. You know what? Let's go back to 1999, because when the Blues fired, and we talked a lot about Mike Keenan, when the Blues fired Mike Keenan in December of 1997, Joel Quenneville took over in 1998, and the team got gradually better. And with people like Pavel Demitra and Jochen Hecht and that group, they were really solid up front. But you get to 1999-2000, and you've got Chris Pronger in the prime of his career, and you've got Al McInnes, who's right at the top of his game too, and you had two of arguably the top 10 defensemen of all time in 99-2000. The Blues got off to an unbelievable start and wound up winning the President's Trophy that year, but the key was that defense pairing. So you can have Demitra up front, and you can have Hecht, and you can have the cycling Slovaks. You had Scott Young. You had a really good, talented team, but the key to that team was its defensemen. Kind of the way the Blues, by the way, won the Stanley Cup in 2019. But that 99-2000 team that won the President's Trophy was keyed by number 44, Chris Pronger. And here's an amazing statistic. In the history of the National Hockey League, there are only two defensemen that have won the Hart Trophy. One of them was Bobby Orr. A lot of people think that Bobby Orr is the greatest player in the history of the sport. The other one, Chris Pronger, in 99-2000, won the Norris for the best defenseman and won the MVP, won the Hart Trophy as the most valuable player in the league. That 99 year was the best year that he had, 99-2000, and it was the best maybe that we'll ever see from a defenseman ever again. When you're 6'6" and 220 and you don't care who you hurt with your stick, you've really got it going. And Prong tells some of those stories in his book. But man, what a year that was, and what a fun time that was to be a fan of the Blues. And you have to appreciate it. Two Hall of Fame defensemen. And then it was amazing for those guys to come back in 2017 for the Winter Classic, because you have Pronger and McInnes lining up on defense. You had Hull, Gretzky, and I think you had another Hall of Fame winger. It might have been Glenn Anderson, I'm not sure. But then you had Grant Fuhr between the pipes. You were able to put 6 Hall of Famers on the ice for your Old Timers game. It was absolutely unbelievable. All right, that is story time with Uncle Randy. Time now for this date in sports history. And on this date in 2001, Curt Schilling of the Arizona Diamondbacks took a no-hitter into the 8th inning against the Padres. Before this happened, Ben Davis of the Padres broke up the no-hitter with a bunt single. Schilling allowed a run in the 9th and finished with a 3-hit, 3-1 win. But there's controversy surrounding Davis's hit, as a few observers that adhere to the unwritten rules claim that he broke that unwritten rule by bunting late in a game with a no-hitter on the line. Schilling was mad because of the unwritten rules, and they say you don't bunt to break up a no-hitter. But Davis's bunt brought the tying run to the plate for San Diego. It's a stupid unwritten rule. How can you not try to win the game because somebody else adheres or wants you to adhere to the unwritten rules? Absolutely preposterous, and that's one of the reasons that Curt Schilling should not be in the Hall of Fame, because here's a guy that is not paying attention to the game situation. You want to win the game. You do everything you can to win the game, and I don't care when the no-hitter is broken up. If you're down 2-0 and you get the tying run to the plate, that guy could hit a home run and tie the game. A lot has happened. Heck, that happened last week with an Angels pitcher that took a no-hitter into the 9th. He allows a base hit and a home run, winds up losing the game by a score of 2-1. It happens all the time. So don't tell me that the unwritten rules should apply so that you can get a no-hitter. Come on, give me a break, Curt. We have a lot of cool things happening here on Matrix Midwest, and we're very excited to have Fastball for you. It comes your way every single day. It's a 1-hour condensed version of the previous day's Cardinal game, and it airs at noon and 4, unless we happen to have a Cardinal day game airing that day. But every game that's on Cardinals TV, you get a shortened version, a condensed version, right here on Matrix Midwest at noon and 4. Watch Fastball if you didn't see the night before, or if you want to see something again. It's pretty cool. You'll love checking it out. Plus, we have a lot of live baseball for you here, minor league and major league. And this Friday night, you've got the Cardinals and the Cubs right here on Matrix Midwest. The first time the Cardinals see Chicago in 2026. And one of our lists later in the week is going to involve the Cardinals and the Cubs. We're looking forward to that. That game can be seen not only here on Matrix Midwest, but on First Alert 4. There's Cardinal baseball on free TV for you right here in St. Louis. And don't forget to tell your friends that you see The Fight with Randy Carricker every day here at 5 and 10 p.m. and then re-aired at 7 o'clock the next morning. And you can catch us not only there, but on the Matrix Midwest app. You can download us and you can listen in your car. Just Bluetooth us on your way to work or back. And you can find us as well at First Alert 4 on. Just search your preferred streaming spot, and find us at First Alert 4 on every night at 7 o'clock, wherever you stream. And don't forget, we also air The Fight here on The Fight. If you want to sign up to take me on and play against me here at Matrix Midwest, go to matrixmidwest.com, click on The Fight with Carricker and Company and sign up there, or you can just email us at thefight@matrixmidwest.com and say, hey, I want to take on Randy in The Fight. We record that, by the way, on Wednesdays around noon. We've had a great time with you today. Hope you enjoyed hearing from Matt Adams and our fun list. For our director, Tyler Klaus, I'm Randy Carricker. Thanks so much for joining us on the show, and we will see you next time here.